The engine sputtered as Amara stepped on the gas. 30 seconds later, 3 women in tailored pantsuits surrounded her car with calculating expressions. "Are you certain you didn't see a man with dark hair pass by, perhaps asking for directions?" questioned the tallest of them, leaning toward the window while her eyes methodically scanned the interior of the worn vehicle. Amara shook her head calmly, keeping her hands visible on the steering wheel. "Like I told you before, ma'am, I just stopped to check my GPS. Haven't seen anyone around here." The woman studied Amara for several more seconds, her cold gaze assessing the 38-year-old black businesswoman in her faded blazer and the car with 3 months of payments overdue. When she finally walked away, Amara released the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Have they gone?" The male voice came from beneath a blanket in the back seat, followed by the sound of movement. From underneath, a man with disheveled dark hair emerged, his expensive running clothes smeared with mud and sweat. "Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't hidden me." Amara Thomas never imagined her day would end like this. Just 4 hours ago, she had been sitting in the empty office of her tech company in Portland, staring at the final eviction notice and the stack of unpaid bills. 8 years of building a business from nothing, all crumbling because investors pulled out at the last minute, coincidentally after discovering the founder was a black woman. "Who are they?" Amara asked, watching the man in the rear-view mirror as he straightened himself in the back seat. "My mother's private security," he held out his hand. "I'm Julian Frost, but everyone calls me Jules." "Amara Thomas," she replied automatically, shaking his hand. "Why is your mother's security team hunting you down like you're a fugitive?" Jules laughed without humor. "Because I escaped with this." He pulled a small external hard drive from his jacket pocket. "My mother is Victoria Frost, CEO of Frost Innovations. Heard of her?" Amara froze. Frost Innovations, the multi-billion-dollar tech empire responsible for dozens of aggressive startup takeovers. The same corporation that had acquired her main competitor and systematically destroyed her company's market position. "I know her very well," she replied, her voice now ice-cold. "Her company practically demolished my business." Jules didn't seem surprised. "So you're just another casualty of my mother's business tactics." He waved the hard drive. "And I have evidence here that those tactics aren't just unethical but completely illegal. Corporate espionage, systematic discrimination, bribery of government officials." Amara's phone vibrated with a notification. It was a stolen vehicle alert for her car's license plate. She showed the screen to Jules. "Your mother just flagged us as car thieves. We need to get off the main roads immediately." Jules paled. "She'll find us." "Not if we're smart about this," Amara replied, a strategy already forming in her mind. She started the engine and took a sharp turn onto a side road. "There's an industrial area about 5 miles east," Jules said, checking a map on his phone. "Abandoned warehouses. We could hide there temporarily." Amara nodded, navigating through increasingly narrow streets as the Portland skyline faded behind them. The rain started falling, a typical Pacific Northwest downpour that reduced visibility but provided welcome cover. "How could someone born into such privilege turn against their own family?" Amara asked, breaking the tense silence. "And why choose my car to hide in?" Jules stared out the window. "I didn't choose your car specifically. I was desperate and you were there." He paused. "As for betraying my family, when you discover your mother built her empire by destroying lives and breaking laws, loyalty becomes complicated." They arrived at the warehouse district as night fell. Amara parked behind a dilapidated building, out of sight from the main road. "We need to check what's on that drive," she said. Jules connected the drive to Amara's laptop. The screen illuminated their faces as folders opened, revealing Victoria Frost's criminal empire, falsified contracts, incriminating emails, and spreadsheets detailing systematic discrimination against minority-owned businesses. "Wait," Amara said suddenly, pointing to a specific folder. Open that one. Jules clicked on it, revealing detailed plans for the takedown of Innotech Solutions, Amara's company. Your mother didn't just acquire my competitor, Amara whispered, her voice tight with controlled rage. She orchestrated a targeted campaign against my company because I refused her lowball acquisition offer. She planted negative reviews, paid off my suppliers to delay shipments, and spread rumors to scare away my investors. I'm sorry, Jules said quietly, but I'm not surprised. That's how she built everything. A crash from outside interrupted them. Headlights swept across the warehouse windows. They found us, Jules whispered. Amara quickly shut the laptop. There's a back exit. Come on. They slipped out just as security personnel entered the front of the warehouse. Racing through the rain, they reached a chain-link fence. Jules boosted Amara over, then scrambled after her. We need help, Amara said as they ran through the industrial complex. Professional help. I know someone, Jules replied. An old friend from law school who specializes in corporate whistleblower cases. She works in Seattle now. Seattle is 2 hours north, Amara said, and they're tracking my car. Jules pointed to a row of food delivery scooters parked outside a nearby restaurant. Not if we change transportation. 2 hours later, soaking wet and exhausted, they arrived at a modest office building in downtown Seattle. On the 8th floor, a simple sign read, Elena Diaz, attorney at law. Are you certain about her? Amara whispered nervously. Absolutely, Jules replied. Elena was the only person who stood by me when I first discovered what my mother was doing. She's been gathering evidence for years, but never had enough for a case. Elena Diaz welcomed them into her minimalist office. At 45, with striking silver streaks in her black hair and rectangular glasses, the lawyer radiated quiet determination. So we finally have concrete evidence, Elena said after examining some of the files. Jules, you understand what this means? Victoria isn't just powerful. She has judges, politicians, and federal agents on her payroll. That's precisely why we came to you, Jules replied. We need someone who knows how to navigate this system. Elena smiled grimly. We'll need more allies and an airtight plan. Meanwhile, in her glass-walled penthouse overlooking Lake Washington, Victoria Frost was berating her head of security. What do you mean you lost him? She demanded, her voice razor-sharp. He's a privileged 26-year-old boy who's never faced a day of hardship in his life. How difficult can it be to locate him? The security chief, visibly uncomfortable, replied, Ma'am, we're monitoring every camera in the city, but he seems to have disappeared. We believe someone is helping him. Who? Victoria snapped. The security chief slid a photo across the tableau, a grainy image from a security camera showing Amara helping Jules into her car. Victoria examined the photo, her expression darkening. Who is this woman? Amara Thomas, ma'am, former CEO of Innotech Solutions, a company we acquired last year. Victoria laughed dismissively. That failure? Julian could have chosen someone more formidable. She tossed the photo aside. She's nothing a mediocre entrepreneur who couldn't even keep a basic startup afloat. Find them and recover that drive before they do something foolish. What Victoria Frost didn't realize was that while she was underestimating them, an unlikely alliance was forming. Elena had recruited her colleague, Marcus Wong, a former cybersecurity specialist for the FBI. Together, the four of them were developing a meticulous strategy in Elena's apartment far from the city center. Frost Innovations has contracts with at least 5 different government agencies, Elena explained, pointing to a digital board. If we can prove fraud in those contracts, not even Victoria's connections can protect her. The challenge is their cybersecurity, Marcus added, typing rapidly on his computer. We need internal access to link this evidence to the company's active systems. Jules smiled for the first time in days. I have access. Mother has always been too paranoid to fully trust her IT department. She created executive credentials for family members that never expire. We still need more, Amara said thoughtfully. We need to make Victoria expose herself publicly. For 3 weeks, they worked relentlessly. Amara sold her grandmother's vintage jewelry, her last valuable possession, to finance their operation. Jules used his insider knowledge to map the corporate structure. Elena prepared legal documents, and Marcus created secure channels to organize and authenticate the evidence. Their first victory came when they remotely accessed corporate servers confirming systematic discrimination against minority-owned businesses. The second arrived when they identified 2 federal judges who had received substantial payments for rulings favorable to Frost Innovations. One evening, alone in the kitchen, Jules found Amara working late. "Why are you doing this?" he asked softly. "You could have turned me in, claimed a reward, and saved your company." Amara looked up from her notes. "Because some things matter more than money. Dignity, justice, proving that the system can work for everyone, not just people like your mother." Jules nodded slowly. "You could have been one of them, you know. Rich, powerful." "Never," Amara replied with a wry smile. "They would never let me into the club, not with this skin, and certainly not as a woman." The following week, Victoria Frost held a press conference announcing a major government contract for Frost Innovations. No one noticed a black woman in a simple suit watching from the back row, nor did they imagine that this would be the beginning of the end for one of the most powerful women in tech. As cameras flashed and reporters asked flattering questions, Amara slipped out, sending a message to the group. Phase 1 complete. She suspects nothing. What Victoria Frost could never have anticipated was that while she was speaking about innovation and corporate responsibility, 4 determined individuals were preparing to expose her empire of lies. The woman she had dismissed as a failure had transformed her greatest disadvantage, being perpetually underestimated, into her most powerful weapon. In the next 48 hours, the world of the powerful would be turned upside down. The Seattle Convention Center was packed for Frost Innovations' annual technology summit. Victoria Frost smiled confidently as animated slides displayed impressive growth projections. "This new government partnership represents the future of secure communications," she proclaimed. "Frost Innovations has always been driven by integrity and excellence." It was at that precise moment that every device in the auditorium received the same notification, simultaneously an anonymous link with the message, "The Real Frost Innovations." Confusion rippled through the audience. Victoria faltered momentarily before continuing. "As I was saying." "Miss Frost," interrupted a male reporter, rising from his seat, "would you care to comment on documents showing your company deliberately targeted and sabotaged minority-owned businesses, including Innotech Solutions?" The color drained from Victoria's face. In the back of the auditorium, Amara watched calmly, Elena at her side. "Preposterous," Victoria replied sharply. "Obvious forgeries." "What about records showing payments to federal judges?" asked another journalist. "Or the emails detailing systematic discrimination in hiring practices?" The screens around the auditorium, remotely controlled by Marcus, began displaying internal emails, memos, and spreadsheets extracted directly from the company's servers. "Where is Julian?" Victoria demanded of her security chief. "This is his doing, isn't it?" In response, the screens displayed a recorded message from Jules. "My name is Julian Frost. I'm sharing this evidence because I believe no corporation should be above the law. These are internal documents proving years of predatory practices, systematic discrimination against minority entrepreneurs, bribery, and judicial corruption." Victoria frantically tried to shut down the presentation, but it was too late. At the rear of the auditorium, federal agents entered discreetly. Elena had coordinated with authorities, ensuring proper legal channels were followed. "This is a conspiracy," Victoria shouted. "My own son manipulated by jealous competitors." "No one manipulated your son," Amara said, finally standing up. "He made his own ethical choice, something you evidently never did." Victoria recognized her, that insignificant entrepreneur. "You think this will resurrect your pathetic little company?" "I'm not here for my company," Amara replied evenly. "I'm here for justice for all the entrepreneurs you systematically destroyed because they didn't match your preferred profile." A murmur spread through the audience. Frost Innovations stock was plummeting in real time on the screens. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," Victoria hissed. "I have connections, influence." "Not anymore," Elena interrupted, displaying her credentials. "Elena Diaz, special counsel to the Attorney General's office. Those connections are already under investigation." The federal agents approached with arrest warrants. "Victoria Frost, you're under arrest on charges of wire fraud, racketeering, and civil rights violations," announced the lead agent as they escorted her away. Victoria cast one final venomous glance at Amara. "You think you've won? This isn't over." "It was over the moment you chose profit over humanity," Amara replied quietly. The international media reported extensively on the unprecedented scandal. The collapse of Frost Innovations shook markets globally and triggered investigations across multiple industries. Documents revealed that Victoria had systematically targeted businesses owned by minorities and women. Marcus, Elena, and Jules found Amara in a small cafe away from the media frenzy. "We did it," said Jules, exhausted but relieved. "What happens now?" asked Marcus. "What will you do, Amara?" Elena inquired. "What I've always wanted to do. Create technology that genuinely helps people, not just the privileged few." "Will you rebuild Innotech?" asked Jules. "Something different," Amara replied. "Something I could never have accomplished before because the system was rigged against people like me." Her phone chimed with a notification from the Justice Department about restitution for affected companies. The wheels of justice had begun turning. That night, while Victoria Frost spent her first night in federal custody, Amara and Jules stood on Elena's balcony overlooking the Seattle skyline. "What are you feeling?" he asked. "Vindication?" "No," Amara answered. "I feel like there's finally a chance for me, for others like me." As city lights twinkled against the night sky, an unexpected partnership was cemented. The privileged son who rejected his corrupt inheritance and the resilient entrepreneur who refused to surrender. What no one could have predicted was how this collapse would fundamentally transform the technology sector, and the real revolution was only beginning. 5 years passed since the fall of Frost Innovations. On the rooftop garden of a modern building in Portland's revitalized tech district, Amara Thomas watched the sunset as employees of Equinox Technologies, her new company, celebrated its 5th anniversary. Equinox had risen from Innotech's ashes. Using the settlement from the Frost case, Amara had created an accelerator specifically for startups founded by entrepreneurs from underrepresented groups. In 5 years, she had launched 23 successful companies and changed the trajectories of hundreds of talented individuals who, like her, had been systematically excluded from the technology ecosystem. "Miss Thomas, your live interview begins in 3 minutes," her assistant reminded her. Amara adjusted her jacket and made her way to the temporary studio. The broadcast was for Changemakers, a program highlighting transformative business leaders. "We're live with Amara Thomas, founder of Equinox Technologies and recently named Innovator of the Decade," announced the host. "Amara, your journey has inspired countless entrepreneurs. From bankruptcy to becoming one of the most influential figures in tech in just 5 years, what's your secret?" Amara smiled. "There is no secret, just the understanding that true success isn't about individual achievement, but about creating pathways for others to succeed as well." Meanwhile, Thousands of miles away in a federal correctional facility in Colorado, Victoria Frost watched the same interview on a communal television. Her once commanding presence now showed profound signs of defeat. The 12-year sentence for corporate crimes was just the beginning of her punishment. Her fortune had been seized, her empire dismantled, and her name had become synonymous with corporate corruption and systemic discrimination. "Your attorney is here, Frost," announced a guard, interrupting her bitter contemplation. In the visitation room, a weary-looking lawyer waited with a thin folder. "Ms. Frost, I have unfortunate news. The final appeal has been rejected, and the Frost Foundation for Equitable Innovation has just announced its inaugural grants program." Victoria laughed bitterly. "My own son using what remains of my money to fund people like Thomas?" The lawyer corrected her. "Mr. Frost is working directly with Ms. Thomas. He serves as the Foundation's executive director." Across the country, Jules was concluding a meeting with potential grant recipients at the Foundation's headquarters in Seattle. After the scandal, he had chosen to use his privilege and the remaining family assets for restorative justice. The Foundation identified entrepreneurs from marginalized communities and provided them with funding, mentorship, and industry connections. "I never imagined we'd be on this side of history," Elena Diaz, now Equinox's chief legal officer, remarked as they walked to the anniversary celebration. "Remember when we were hiding in that warehouse planning to expose your mother?" Amara smiled. "Sometimes I wonder if we've done enough to repair the damage your family caused." "There's no perfect atonement," replied Marcus, who now headed Equinox's cybersecurity division, "but there is an ongoing commitment to do better." At the celebration, Amara raised her glass in a toast. Surrounding her were not just her closest allies, but dozens of new entrepreneurs whose lives she had helped transform. "5 years ago, we were fighting a system that seemed invincible," she said. "Today, we're not just changing the rules. We're creating an entirely new game, and this is only the beginning." Later that night, after everyone had departed, Amara and Jules remained on the office terrace, gazing at the illuminated city. "Have you ever thought about how it all started?" Jules asked. "With me hiding you in my back seat," Amara replied with a smile. "Fate," Jules suggested. "Choice," Amara corrected. "You chose to stand against your mother when you could have remained silent. I chose to help you when I could have turned you in. It's our choices that define us, not our circumstances or our past." Jules nodded, reflecting on how a series of decisions, some small, some monumental, had transformed his life and the lives of countless others. Together, they had created something more significant and meaningful than either could have imagined alone. The true victory against Victoria Frost wasn't her dramatic downfall, but the quiet revolution that followed. One where people like Amara no longer had to fight for scraps from the table because now they built their own tables and invited others to join them. This is the deeper lesson of their story. Justice isn't merely about toppling the powerful, but about constructing more equitable systems from the foundations up. It's about transforming pain into purpose and rejection into revolution. And sometimes, the catalyst for that transformation comes from the most unexpected alliance: a bankrupt black businesswoman and a privileged white whistleblower who discovered that their differences were far less important than their shared humanity and commitment to justice. What neither of them realized that night was that their story had inspired a new generation of whistleblowers across industries. In boardrooms across the country, executives who had once operated with impunity now looked over their shoulders, wondering if they might be next. The Frost case had become a watershed moment, proving that even the most powerful could be held accountable. 6 months later, Amara stood before Congress, testifying about the need for stronger protections for minority entrepreneurs and more robust oversight of corporate acquisitions. The technology sector cannot truly innovate if it systematically excludes diverse perspectives, she told the packed chamber. What happened to my company wasn't an isolated incident, it was part of a pattern that has stifled innovation and reinforced inequality for decades. As she spoke, Jules watched from the gallery, marveling at how their unlikely partnership had evolved into a movement that was reshaping not just an industry, but society itself. And in her prison cell, Victoria Frost received a letter, the first communication from her son in 5 years. It contained just 3 sentences. "I don't regret what I did, but I do regret that you gave me no choice. Some legacies aren't worth preserving." The true power of their story wasn't in its ending, but in its ripple effects. In the countless lives changed, the systems reformed, and the fundamental shift in what was possible for those who had been told, explicitly or implicitly, that they didn't belong. In the end, the most revolutionary act wasn't bringing down a corrupt empire, but building something better in its place.